Next, I want to talk about, as you were mentioning about diabetes, etc. I want to talk about Food is Not Bae. I know you have a Food is Not Bae book. Food is Not Bae a podcast as well. So you care about the fact that the relationship that we have in the Black community is a struggle when it comes to food. So let me know what you think about that.
Yeah, when people hear that I'm a food relationship strategist, they automatically kind of go towards the end of diet culture and weight
Mm-hmm.
loss, and that she's going to tell me how to eat, or she's a person who is on the side of this is what you need to eat, that is not what you need to eat, and that's absolutely not true. As a
Mm-hmm.
food relationship strategist, and the reason that I call myself a strategist is we're learning and educating ourselves about how do we get to this place, and a large part of my work as a food relationship strategist is helping us to understand the history behind how we developed an unhealthy relationship with food. A lot of diet culture, meaning this culture that kind of places thinness as supreme,
Yes.
thinness as superior. The more thin you are, the more worthy you are. That places value in your worthiness on the food that you eat or the things that you consume. That's what we mean by diet culture. Diet culture that says that fat is bad, skinny is wrong. So many of our eating habits have been bred out of that model, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we go to the doctor and the doctor asks us, well, have you eaten chips? And you're like, yeah, you're like, well, you need to stop eating chips and you need to eat kale, or you need to stop eating chips and you need to eat greens. And we're not, and basically what diet culture does is puts the onus on the individual for having the problem and doesn't take a look at the systemic issues that have created the problems in our
Yes.
communities that have led to us having unhealthy relationships with food. So we can't talk about an unhealthy relationship with food without talking about food deserts, without
Mm.
talking about a lack of resources, without
Yes.
talking about cost, without
Mm-hmm.
talking about affordability, without talking about cultures that have been wiped away from us. And we were being fed cultures that have been told to be better for us. So, for example, we're told that grits is bad, but oatmeal is good. We're told that greens are bad, but kale is good.
I
We're
love my
told that
greens.
rice is bad, right? Rice is bad, but eat couscous. Like all of these things. And if you stop for a minute and think about it, what is happening is that they're ripping the very culture in essence of who we are and the ways that we engage with food and the food that becomes and shapes our identity and bonding and connections, taking that away from us and feeding us things literally that they feel like is best for us. So many
Yes.
of us will look at each other or look at ourselves and say, "Oh, girl, I can't have greens, but I'm gonna eat this spinach and kale, or I can't have corn, or but I'm gonna eat this quinoa." And if we stop and just think, like they're both grains.
Mm-hmm.
Why is one better than other? Because one is heavily rooted in our culture, one is
Mm-hmm.
heavily rooted in our ethics or ethnic identity, and the other
Yes.
one is not. And so these things are things that I talk about when we talk about building a healthy relationship with food, is feeling empowered with food and not feeling shame, guilt, anxiety, kind of confusion around the different foods, but really understanding and getting back to listening to your body. Diet culture is super traumatizing because
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of taught all these things about your body not being good enough. And what we know about trauma is that trauma comes in and disconnects your brain from your body. And so you kind of lose the ability to listen to what your body is telling you need, because it's filled with rhetoric and education or information around just needing to lose weight. So in an effort to
Mm.
just lose weight to be right enough, we're losing the ability to listen to what our bodies are telling us. Is my body full?
Hmm.
Does that make me full? Do I even like kale? Kale is
Right.
nasty to me and it makes me bloated. But because you told me that's what I need, I'm eating it, which means I'm not listening to my body, which
Right.
means that I'm not honoring my body. Am I hungry? But you're telling me that I don't need to eat, and you're telling me just to drink water. So I'm further dishonoring myself. I'm not listening to myself. And so when I do that, I lose my mind body connection and I don't feel settled in my body, and I feel very worn down. I feel like there's nothing right that I can do, and you don't show up empowered in that way. Empowerment comes from saying, what does my body need right now? I
Mm-hmm.
need a sandwich, and not being afraid to eat the bread that comes on the sandwich.
Right.
Now, I'm not
Right.
talking about, and not because bread is a problem, but because you've been told that bread is the reason for the issue that you have. And so a lot of this is just re-educating and unlearning a lot of the things that we learned that are harmful to us and actually
Right.
not helpful at all. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I was 60 pounds overweight, but I ate my bread.
Mm-hmm.
I did
Yeah.
not eat all these salads because that wasn't in me before I
Yeah.
had lost those 60 pounds. Okay. So
Yes.
it's like you said, it's about creating the relationship with food. It's about the mental and actually planning the necessary
Mm-hmm.
steps to Like, don't take away the foods that you like, but eat them in moderation. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, big thing, and for Black History Month, we believe in soul food. There's nothing wrong with soul food, but in moderation, because the food can literally take over the soul if y'all don't relax on some of the stuff you eat. That's why we're saying food is not bad. Go ahead.
Yes, and food is not bae, mean, and bae was to stand for before anything else, or better than anything else, that kind of thing. Because a lot of times when we have scarcity mindset, we overdo it. And a lot of what diet culture teaches us is scarcity. And many of us grew up in scarcity. That's why I talk about food deserts. So if you grew up in a place where food was not certain for you, it wasn't guaranteed that you were going to eat, it becomes your everything. When we go on diets, think about when I used to fast or any of those things. The very thing, when I bodybuilding at one time, anything that I was told that I couldn't have was the only thing that I focused on. So if you're telling me that I can't have food or I don't have access to food, then that's going to be the only thing that I focus on, and I'm going to overdo it. And in overdoing it, I'm not listening to my body. I'm engaging in more of a hoarding type of behavior, because I don't know when the next time is going to be where this will be abundant to me. So we've got to learn abundance. But in order to learn abundance, we've got to correct the systemic issues that exist that create scarcity in our neighborhoods and our communities.
That's right. I love